Welcome to Lit Crit as Fuck, the audio experience in which I say shit about stuff and you listen to junk. The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Part 1. Here Be Dragons. First, we must introduce some characters, by way of a Malcovich door or two.
Malcovich. Malcovich, Malcovich. Malcovich, Malcovich. Malcovich, Malcovich, Malcovich. Malcovich!
The way that Dostoevsky tends to write his narrators is if they have these sort of John Malkovich-esque entrances into every single mind of every single character that the narrator can enter when necessary. And so at any point, the story can be from the perspective of any character, but at the same time, there is a narrator who is also a character. He's actually capable of being a person with opinions, but also he can enter the other characters' Malkovich doors in order to tell the story from their perspective. So there's 4 brothers, and there's a dad, Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov.
This is the explosive story of the Karamazov family. The seed of depravity and sin that was in their father was the only thing the brothers had in common.
Fyodor Pavlovich is a bad guy. There you go. Bad guy. Terrible dude. Just all around idiot. Not an idiot, but an idiot. Doesn't care about anybody but himself. Anyway, he's important because he has babies, and his babies are brothers, Karamazov. So he gets married to this noble lady who's all rich and beautiful and stupid because she rebels by marrying this guy she hates. They manage to have a child. And then she leaves him for some dude and then she dies. And Fyodor Pavlovich is a terrible, terrible person and terrible father. And so he just completely ignores his child, who is extremely young and small, and just forgets he exists and goes and starts having crazy parties. Like you do. Fyodor Pavlovich is very stalwart, Christian, stern, get-off-my-lawn-y servant Grigory and his not terribly talked-about wife Marfa take in little baby Dmitri for about a year. Then Dmitri's mom's cousin, Pyotr Alexandrovich Musov, comes to town because he has land there and also hates Fyodor Pavlovich, like really hates them. They don't like each other. And so he comes to the town and he's like, I want custody of this little baby boy. And Fyodor Pavlovich is like, yeah, take him. And he brings him to Moscow and then he goes off to France and Dmitri is left in Moscow with some old lady and then she dies and then her daughter is taking care of him and then he goes to another daughter or something and it's not really clear who raises him. All the while, Fyodor Pavlovich starts having these parties. They're wild, crazy, probably not as crazy as one would imagine when you hear the words orgies of debauchery. Most likely there's lots of candy, lots of alcohol, women maybe dressed in clothes that don't cover up every bit of them, definitely dancing, which is a super no-no. You do not want your women to dance. Men, do not let your women dance. It's bad for God. I don't think it was like an out in the open, eyes wide shut scenario is what I'm trying to say. Regardless, it was, considered pretty creepy and sleazy and probably lots of young peasant girls who, let's face it, Fyodor Pavlovich didn't exactly care about consent, as we will find when we go into his next marriage, which is to a 16-year-old orphan girl named Sophia, because he's gross. Fyodor Pavlovich is on a business trip and he sees this very young, naive, innocent girl and decides that he has to have her because he's a lecherous, gross guy. And she's very unhappy with her situation. The woman who took her in and pays for her crap, like to eat and junk. This woman is apparently pretty terrible to the point where Sophia actually tries to hang herself. And Sophia is like, oh, hey, what's up, older man who wants to marry me? You'll take me away from all the bad things happening. And he's like, yeah, totally. That's what I'm gonna do. And then the old woman, she's like, nope, nope, sir, nope-a-ronies. You're not going to marry this 16-year-old girl. So he's like, oh, well, that's cool, because yoink, and then he just elopes with Sophia. Now, the first marriage, he got a pretty hefty dowry, because Adelaida Ivanovna was a noble rich lady and so forth, and her family did what you do, and they gave money to the guy. So he's got some wealth now on account of her. So he actually tends to be a pretty good businessman, even though he's businessmen too tend to be gross. So it all tracks. He takes the young girl back to the little village that they live in without a dowry. He uses that as a sort of excuse to completely abuse her. He continues his orgies of debauchery. And our little 16-year-old girl, who's like never seen the world and also is like super religious, is like, this is terrible and I hate my life. And he's like, well, look, I saved you from the life you hated. And also I didn't get a dowry, so shut your mouth. And she goes crazy. They have 2 kids, because again, like I said, consent isn't an issue. These 2 children is the most important characters is in the book. She said with authority, even though she wants to say, in my opinion, in most people's opinion. I'll say that. Why? Because this entire book is a conversation between 2 brothers. If you whittle this down to its elements, seems like a mixed metaphor, but I'm whittling down to the elements. If you do that with this novel, you will have 2 characters, and their names will be Ivan and Alyosha Karamazov. Everything else is setting. The action of this book is secondary to the philosophy of this book, because it's Dostoevsky, goddammit. Fyodor Pavlovich and Sophia's marriage lasts for 8 whole entire years, and then she dies. It's pretty clear that she's, good because on account of she made a baby who is Christ. The first baby she had is not the Jesus guy. The first baby she had is Ivan. He's still a baby when she has the Jesus kid, whose name is Alyosha. We got Dmitri, we got Ivan, we got Alyosha. After Sophia dies, the same thing happens with her 2 beautiful little boys. Ivan and Alyosha go into the care of Grigory and Marfa. Then Sophia's benefactress comes to the town, and she gives Fyodor Pavlovich very deserved slaps on the face. She trots those kids out of town, and then she dies. And then this dude takes them in, who's this city councilman kind of guy, and he pays for their education. Alyosha actually ends up living with his family. Ivan goes off to school pretty early because he's a smarty smart pants, and none of the boys really grow up together. None of them really know each other very well. Ivan is kind of an emo kid, but he's like super smart. And Alyosha represents everything that's good in the whole wide world. And he is the hero of the story. We are told that from the get-go, that this is the hero, Alyosha, the Jesus guy.
Good knowing he's out there taking her easy for all us sinners.
So now we can talk about Smerdyakov, the bastard son of Fyodor Pavlovich and stinking Lizaveta, the Russian bag lady who smells bad and is mute, does not speak, and Fyodor Pavlovich definitely rapes her, and she gets pregnant. 9 months later, she shows up on the estate wailing and has a baby in the bathhouse and then dies. So Grigory and Marfa, by the by, well, they had a child. With 6 fingers. Because of this, Grigory, the not only old-fashioned, but super religious, crazy guy, as they're getting prepared to do the christening, says, well, let's not bother having a christening. And Fyodor Pavlovich is going to be the godfather, because, honestly, I don't think Grigory knows anyone else. And Fyodor Pavlovich says, why aren't we having a christening? Grigory's like, well, he's a dragon! They go ahead and they christen him anyway. Then he dies. The night that Grigory and Marfa bury their child, Marfa hears what she believes to be a child crying outside, and they both wake up and they go out and they find it to be Lizaveta giving birth. She's given birth to Pavel Fyodorovich Smerdyakov, and then she dies. Smerdyakov is born the night that Grigory and Marfa bury their dragon. Grigory names the child Pavel, and then everyone, starts to be like, Pavel Fyodorovich. Am I right? Everyone knows this is Fyodor Pavlovich's kid. Fyodor Pavlovich's father's name was Pavel, so Grigory used Fyodor Pavlovich's father's name when he named this boy, clearly knowing as well who the dad was. Now, the name Smerdyakov means son of the stinking one, so that's a really nice thing to be called. And Fyodor Pavlovich was the one who came up with the surname, and it's what he's called. You almost never read the word Pavel. He's referred to as Smerdyakov always and to his face. He's taken in by Grigory and Marfa, and this time nobody comes to take the kid away. He just grows up as a servant on the estate of the guy who's actually his dad. It turns out that he's a psychopath. Smerdyakov killed cats when he was a kid, and he performed these weird, elaborate funerals for them, dressed as a priest, because he's normal. That's not a red flag.
There be dragons here.
Smirnikov also has epilepsy. I mean, it's a book by Fyodor Dostoevsky, so somebody's gonna have epilepsy. Dmitri is all trying to get his money because he thinks he's owed money from Fyodor Pavlovich because his mom's dowry is what got Fyodor Pavlovich rich. And so Dmitri always believed he was going to have an inheritance. And so he kind of lived that way, got himself into debt. And so he's like, yo, I need money. And his dad's like, not going to happen. And I don't like you, go away. And Dmitri's like, I'll go away when you give me money. And so they don't like each other. And so apparently Dmitri calls Ivan in to be like a mediator. So Ivan comes back in order to mediate this clusterfuck of a father-son thing between his half-brother Dmitri and Fyodor Pavlovich. Alyosha is back in town because he decided to become a monk. And there's this monastery in the town where there is this really famous guy named Father Zosima, who's an elder, which means that he's like a teacher of other monks. And he takes the confession like a priest would, except he's not ordained. Alyosha is the student and the novice, becoming a monk under Father Zosima as his teacher. And Father Zosima is like this really good dude that Alyosha loves. It's the father he never had because Fyodor Pavlovich ain't no dad.
Because he's bad and not rad. N'Djamena is the capital of Czech. In the next episode, we will find out that you cannot bring Fyodor Pavlovich anywhere. There will be some raucous, action-packed discussions of the separation of church and state. And if you can't find your way to a Russian elder's cell, don't worry, just wait a sec. Out will pop an adorable little demon with a lisp to show you the way. And so, we have reached the end of the episode. We have gone on quite a journey, my friends. And the journey has only just begun. For more is to come later when I'm done recording it. Fare thee well.
Malcovich!